All right, everybody. We have on somebody that we were like, we
Yes.
literally jumped up and down when we saw an email from your team. We have Andy Andrews with us
Yes.
today. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us and share a little bit about the Noticer, our book club pick of the month.
Hey, I'm honored. I'm really excited to be here with you guys, and I think you're doing such good stuff. Having a book club, especially today, I mean, that's just such a great leadership thing there. So, but thank you for having me.
Well, it truly is an honor. Our listeners
Yes.
know how stoked I am, like a nervous wreck. I'm like, Andy's going to be on the show.
Yeah. And February's book was actually Born to Win, and we read it, I don't know, probably 5-6 years ago. And like we thought Zig was reading it, and then like we kept thinking like, well, that was a nice Southern man. And then we started listening to your audio because you read your books, and we were like, oh my gosh! So some of our book readers actually listened to you with Zig's book last month.
Sure.
Yeah.
You know, they had me do that. That was the last book that was put out when Zig was still with us, and so his family, Gene and Tom and Julie and Cindy, asked me to do it because it was just going to be too much for him at the time. And do you know why they asked me to do it? They asked me to do it because I can do his voice.
Oh,
And so they didn't want his voice in the whole book,
right.
but they wanted certain pieces of it
Mhm.
done that way. So the people who listened to the audio, it was fun to do because I'd be talking along like this, and then all of a sudden go into Zig Ziglar, and,
Yes.
you got to have goals. So it was,
Yes.
but it was fun to do. I did it, when I did it, Tom, his son, was sitting out in the studio, and so I'm watching him. He's listening to it, and here I am doing his dad. And he's just kind of sat there. He never moved. He never looked up. He never smiled. He never frowned. He just kind of had his chin in his hand. And after about an hour of it, I was getting kind of nervous, and I thought, I hope he's liking this. And so I called a break, and I went out and I said, hey, everything okay? And he said, I lived with the man for 50 years, and I might know the difference, but I don't think anybody else is going to. I said, really? He said, yeah.
Really?
And I said, well, I got a choice to make on this next part coming up. I need to either do the on and on Zig, the slow down Zig, or the crazy Zig with this part. He said, no, what's the difference? I said, well, the on and on Zig is where he keeps talking about the same thing and he's doing it in the same cadence, and one thing leads to another and is going like this. I said, but the slow down Zig is where he's talking like this, and then he'll stop and go real slow like that. I said, but the crazy Zig is where he's talking and he's going along, and all of a sudden he starts doing this. And he said, oh, do the crazy Zig, do the crazy.
It's so funny. Sounds like a Southern minister.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So that's so funny. And so I guess like that was our first, interaction with you, and we didn't even know it. And then I was at a dinner party. I know, right? I was at a dinner party, and somebody started talking about how they met you at Floribama, and you had this amazing story. And I was like, oh, what's his books? I've got to read it. So I immediately got the Time Traveler's Gift and the Noticer. And the Noticer, like, they're both so good, but the Noticer was just like, I've given it to people. Like, I'm just like, Christmas, like, I don't care if you read it. I just need to know that you have it.
Well, here in the studios, we have the suitcase is over here. And then there's a couple of things from Noticer Returns, and then there's a couple of things from Just Jones in there, including that crazy lady's hat is over there. So
well, we were going to come see it.
Yeah, we have.
I'm really glad you like that book. That's a special one to me.
It really is. That you said Jones is based on a real person, Jones.
Yeah. When you read the Noticer, one of the things that I really want people to know is the very first chapter is totally true, just like it happened.
Wow.
There's some imagination, literary license put in the rest of it, but that first chapter, I mean, that's how it happened. And, you know, I still drive by that pier I slept under several times a week. And, you know, he was just like that. You know, I just say like Brent Burns is in that chapter. And I saw Brent the other day and it's almost, that chapter is almost like a time capsule for me.
That's so cool. So would you say like having just him and somebody that was like checking on you, did that help you when everything was so bleak? Or just like, how do you stay so positive and make those choices when things seem just like overwhelming?
Well, you know, I probably wasn't at the time. I probably wasn't I definitely wasn't making good choices. You know, it's funny now when I do interviews with like these national news shows or something, they always get around to saying, well, having been a homeless person, you know, what kind of advice do you have for homeless people? And it's kind of a weird question for me because I wasn't what they think of. I mean, there was no pathology. I wasn't addicted to anything. I wasn't, you know, on the run. I just didn't have any money, and my parents were dead.
Mhm.
And so and the thing that complicated that whole situation, and you think about this, you know, this was before the internet, before cell phones, all this kind of stuff. And so the thing that complicated the situation was I had quit college. And, you know, when mama got real sick, I quit college and I said I was going to be a speaker, a comedian. Well, there were people that just went nuts. I mean, friends and family. Now, my parents didn't,
Right.
but there were friends and family that just went nuts. And, you know, I literally had friends whose parents forbid them to be around me
Wow.
because I was such a horrible example because I had left college. And so and you know, they're all saying, you're going to ruin your life. You're ruining your life. Well, so obviously when I ended up living on the beach and sleeping under a pier, the last thing I was going to do was call them and go, hey, you know, you said I was going to ruin my life. Well, I have. And so, you know, so they just didn't know. And so I was angry during that time, you know, and I really kind of, I started changing with Jones. I mean, when he came into my life, when he got me reading those books, that was a big deal. And he was the first person ever to tell me the truth about myself. And when, you know, when I say that, a lot of times people go, well, what does that mean? Well, you know, when you run into somebody having bad problems, we rarely do we, well, think about this. What do? We give them $5. We put them on the prayer list at church, you know, but rarely do we sit down and tell them things about themselves that might make them angry at us.
Right.
Okay.
Like he was you know, like he didn't mess around.
That's right.
Great
No,
shooter.
he pulled no punches.
Yeah.
And, you know, I never will forget doing something one day and, you know, and I said something like, well, you know, I guess everything happens for a reason. And he said, yeah, but sometimes the reason is because you were stupid and did something you didn't do. I was like, "Oh, thanks a lot."
So funny. Like when he says things like that, like
Mhm.
in the book and in real life, like the time capsule you mentioned, like how do you like, I mean, his perspective is so different, but like it's something that we should pick up on. Like, how do you keep those noticer muscles going?
Active. Like it
Yeah.
seems like almost common sense, but it doesn't
Right.
until somebody says it.
Yeah.
Well, I had to wake him up at first because I did not think that way.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the first time he ever said to me, remember, you can't always believe everything you think.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I didn't even know what he was talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that took me a long time to really unpack that
Mhm.
and to understand the importance of that. And I think I was telling one of my sons the other day that of all the advice I've gotten throughout my life, I have probably made better use of that advice than anything else. You know, that you can't believe everything you think.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That has helped me grow in ways. It's helped me help other people grow, help companies
Mhm.
literally double,
Wow.
because companies are in situations and teams are in situations where there's an industry standard, there's a best practice, there's a way we do things.
Mhm.
And yeah, there is, but you can't believe everything you think. All right.
Yeah.
And the easy way to explain that would be, have you ever known something? I mean, you knew it and you could argue it and you could win the argument, but then
Mhm.
you found out 4 or 5 months later or 6 months later, well, that wasn't exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you realize that you're either totally wrong or your information was incomplete. Well, we've all done that. And so if you've ever done that, you think, does the possibility exist that something now, your information might be incomplete? And you would say, well, of course, it's possible that something I know now and my information might be incomplete. Okay. But the point is, we don't know what that is, do we?
Right. Like it's
Yeah.
just going to
And
take.
we don't know how many subjects in your life that covers.
Yeah.
And so it's a thought process that allows you to keep searching.
Yeah.
And so, but there was so much of that as he would talk to me and as I read and as I listened to his thoughts, I began to think that way. I mean, what our mamas told us is true. We do begin to talk and think and act like the people we're around.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
That's not just a kid thing. That's an
Mhm.
adult thing too,
Yeah.
and but it was to be able to think not just outside the box, but like way outside of town, away from the neighborhood that had the factory that was building the boxes. Everybody else was sitting around,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because and I know you remember that because I put this in the book. At the time he asked me, he said, "Okay, there's 3 seagulls sitting on a log, and one of them decides to fly away. How many of them are left?" And I said 2. He said, "No, 3." I'm like, "You said one of them decided to fly away." He said, "Right. He decided to. He didn't do it. Deciding to do it ain't doing it." And I'm like, "Oh, yeah." I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's a different way of thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he has such a good sense of humor like that, which I know it's your sense of humor coming out. Like, do you feel like it matches your own? I feel like you're a little bit
It
of
does.
Jones,
Yes.
It
Like
it
just
does.
from
It
like your
does.
podcasts and things.
we had no clue
It
you were a
does.
comedian until one of our, no insult. We know
Yeah.
you from reading.
Yeah.
And then we were
Sure.
telling one of our friends that we were going to interview you. And he's like, the comedian? And we're like,
What?
huh?
There are people that knew me as a comedian that have no idea what I'm doing now, and there are people that know what I'm doing now that was like, "Wow, wonder whatever happened to the comedian." I mean, they have no
Yeah.
idea I was that. And I was on an airplane not too long ago, I guess before COVID, but I was on an airplane, and the flight attendant came by and I just talked to her for a second,
Right.
and then the guy sitting next to me, he said, "Would I know your voice?"
Mhm.
And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He said, "Would I have heard your voice before?" And I said, "Yeah, maybe."
Mhm.
He said, "Would you like maybe have been on the radio?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Do you tell a baseball story on the Comedy Channel on Sirius XM?" I said, "Yeah, that's me." I said, "You got good ears, man."
That's
So,
awesome.
but yeah, I toured for 2 years with Joan Rivers and for 5 years with Kenny Rogers. I toured with Cher and Shaka Khan and
Wow.
Wow.
tons of people.
I know. Like you've done like I feel like you've had like 5 lives like in this one
Yes.
life.
I kind of feel like that too.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Well, we love Jones's sense of humor.
Yeah.
It's kind of dry and it goes, oh, wait a minute. He was kind of making a joke there.
Mhm.
Right. My favorite times are when Jones is funny and whoever he's talking to doesn't get it.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's like, I mean, those are my favorite times,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you think Jones would say about all this pandemic stuff, all the stuff that's happening in our country? all of it. Like, would he have advice for us?
Yep. I think Jones would say, well, you're so concerned about the uncertainty,
Mm-hmm.
but you're forgetting that things were just as uncertain the day before you found out about COVID. You just weren't thinking about it, but you didn't know what was going to happen then either.
Yeah.
That's what Jones would say. He'd say, come on, it's because what you're doing, he would tell me, he would say, Andy, if you're focusing on how horrible it is to be uncertain,
Mm-hmm.
you're just choosing the wrong perspective,
Mm-hmm.
because things were just as uncertain before you focused on it being uncertain.
Right.
But that's what perspective is. And that's what I've understood from him through the years, is that, perspective, if you ask people what is perspective, people would say, well, it's how people think, it's how people see things. It's, do they see the glass half empty? Do they see glass half full? So, perspective is how they see things. Well, that's true, but it's not really the truth. Okay.
Yeah.
Because the truth is, it's not just how you see things, it's how you choose to see things.
Yeah.
All right. Because the, half empty or half full, it's not half empty, it's not half full. It is what it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
The level of the water, it just is what it is.
Yes.
And so it's however you choose to see it
Mm-hmm.
will make a difference, because we know that if you look at something and you go, man, this is the worst thing that could have ever happened. Well, people who think it's the worst thing that could ever happen, what do? They sit down, they become depressed, they worry, and they become glass half empty people. Okay. Now, what happens to glass half empty people? Glass half empty people don't get as many opportunities. They don't get promoted. Because we don't want to be around glass half empty people. And,
Right.
nobody says, hey, we're going to promote you, or hey, we want to hire you, And so it's kind of that perspective becomes very true. It does become the worst thing that could have ever happened.
Right.
Okay. But people who go, there's something we can do with this. Every time something has changed, we've figured it out. Every time something's changed, we've looked back and go, wow, if that hadn't happened, we'd never be doing this. And look how great this is. So this could be the best thing that could have ever happened. And so people who think that way, they use the time to read or to learn or to, connect with somebody. They use that time. And so they're glass half full people. Well, what happens to glass half full people? Glass half full people, other people want to be around them.
Right.
They get hired, they get promoted, they get put in special situations, they get opportunities because people are around them. Glass half empty people don't get as many opportunities because there's just not as many people around them to give them. Okay.
Yeah.
And so in essence, thinking that way, it does kind of become the best thing that could have ever happened. But that's what Jones would say, dude, you got to choose your perspective.
Yep.
Yeah.
I totally agree. One of my most hated sayings, but it's true, is perception becomes reality. And it really does. Like, however you perceive something is how you live life. And that becomes your reality. So yeah.
And I feel like right now, like we all have to be glass half full people, because there's so many people that are choosing the easy way of thinking everything's down and sad.
Doom and gloom.
So
they're picking fights with each other instead of
taking the time to be a glass half full person.
It is amazing, isn't it? And so it becomes an opportunity. And I think, there are times in our history as people where history becomes an encourager. All right. But you got to know it to have it encourage you. And to understand how many times through the years that we have figured things like this out. It's really ridiculous. So
I totally agree. And I know our book of the month is The Noticer, but I feel like if people are struggling with any of this, they need to go read The Time Traveler's Gift, because you point out none of those people that you go back in time to are like, just like, oh, everything's perfect and happy and easy. Like everything was at like a challenging point. Like,
Right.
and I'll still go back to the, the notes that you have for each rule or each lesson.
And that's that to me, when I wrote The Traveler's Gift, that's what I was after doing. I was trying to pick, we always think of people like that as being hugely successful. And, we want to go back, and if I would go back in time, I would want to go back and, and we always think in terms of, seeing the great things happen. But I wanted this guy who was going through the worst time in his life to go back in time and to visit with 7 historical figures that were going through the worst time in their life.
Yeah.
So he gets to be with Anne Frank in the annex and watch that happen and watch that unfold. And Lincoln at Gettysburg. And so it's all, I still enjoy the premise, right?
Yes. I feel like that'll have to be like another book club. Like,
yes, we're
going to have to mix it in. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm like, that's another one that I'll just pass out. Like, no, you have to read this one. And you do such an amazing job weaving in like the positivity and also your faith within all of your books. Like, do you feel like that's always been a cornerstone for you?
It has, but I do it in a specific way because I don't want people to disregard the book. Well, let's put it this way. We all, there's a lot of us, we love Billy Graham. Okay. But we know that we all have friends that if we give them a Billy Graham book, they're not reading it.
Right.
They're just not reading it.
Right.
And so what I want to do is, for Christians recognize where a lot of this stuff is sourced. And what I'm wanting to do, I'm wanting to create conversations. I want to create conversations between, people who believe one way and people who believe another.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to create conversations because if you have truth on your side, you can bring people to a side.
Right.
And if you're likable when you're doing it.
Yes.
And so, we don't have enough conversations. I would like to go back in time and find the first architect that drew a house without a front porch, because that was the beginning of the end.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's true.
That is.
And I always find it's important for me to have a front porch. I love my front porch.
Makes a difference,
Yeah.
especially if you're on the beach.
Yes.
Right.
So kind of before we get to our next question, because this is a random Kim question. I hope you don't mind me throwing it in.
No.
But, reading the Notice of Returns, which we're going to have to give that book to everybody.
Yes.
Is a Jubilee real?
It is real.
It is real. Have you seen one?
I have never seen one. Dang it. Have we got that picture, Matt, of that thing? See if it's there, or see if it's in my office. Might be in my office. But yeah, it is real. And people ask that. And it's real, just like I wrote it. This is the only place in the world, but it has happened a couple of times at Tokyo Bay or something like that.
Yeah. Wow.
But it happens several times a year here. And it's really aggravating to me that I've never seen one. But like I said in the book, you can't make a reservation for it. You can't pay anybody to get in on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so
That's
cool.
really cool.
Yeah. Which that's in the second one. So they're going to fall in love
Yes.
with the Noticer, and they're going to have to read the Notice of Returns. Which
Yeah.
I think that might be my favorite out of the 3. I think.
Thank you.
I know.
Thank you. I've got a buddy who lives over there, lives on the Eastern Shore, and that's what we call that area. And so he last year told me, I was talking to him one day, and he said, yeah, I went to bed last night, and there's flounder coming up to the top of the water there in the shallows. I knew there was fixing to be a Jubilee. I said, did you take pictures? He said, no, I went to bed. I'm like,
What?
No.
but he's like seen 20 of them. I can't find it. I don't know.
Aw.
We'll find it and take a picture and send it to you.
Okay.
But it's
That's so cool.
it's a picture that somebody took, and we had it blown up because it's just amazing. But yeah, it happens every year.
Wow.
That would be crazy.
Yeah.
I'm not a big seafood person, but it would just be neat to see.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So cool. And we know that you're a big reader because I mean, in the notice here you talk about books, and then in Just Jones, like the table is propped up like literally on books. So are there
Can you
any that you
That's the book. That's the table I'm at right here.
really.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Again,
Matt,
like
can-
when I read, I'm like, because you kind of have the Jones sense of humor. So I'm like, is the table real or is the table not real? So it's so cool that it's really there.
Yeah. But are you guys? Do you broadcast your podcast on video?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Well, then when Matt comes back in, we'll get him to take the camera and take a picture of the table so you can see it.
That's
Okay,
so cool.
that's
Yeah.
great.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, like the whole table is set up on books.
Propped up on books.
Yeah. So
Can you hold that camera? I mean, because they broadcast in video, and we were talking about the table. Can you show the table with the books, and how do you do that?
Come on, Matt.
Matt is my technological guru. I don't know. I'm a technological moron. There it is, and there's
Oh,
my.
very cool.
Wow. Forrest Gump,
The
the
Voice.
voice. That is so
Can't
cool.
read the other ones. I
Can't
need better
either.
glasses.
I know, I do
or better
too.
eyes.
That is so cool.
All right.
I love that.
Nice loafers.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
That's very cool. All
Very
right. So we're
cool.
definitely coming now.
Yes.
Yeah, you have to. Because when we do the Blue Plate special together, we do it here twice a week. It's live at 12:15 Central it's live on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube. And so when you guys come down and we do it, we'll be doing it right here
That's
on-
so
I'm so
cool.
excited.
I know. I
at
cannot
the
wait.
Peace Table.
At the piece.
They're upside down now.
Oh, maybe we should stand on our head.
Yeah.
Yeah, no worries.
We're talking about coming down.
Mhm.
So when we come down, we've been to Orange Beach a few times, but we are eaters. Where should we go
Yes.
eat?
Ah, yeah. Well, there's a place called The Gulf,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
it's right on
Yes,
the,
Yes.
We've been there.
Mhm.
yeah, okay. It's made out of
That
containers.
guacamole.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And so the grouper sandwich at the Gulf is great. And of course, we eat over at the Yacht Club at the Floribama, and where else? I love the salads at Cosmos.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Sea and Suds is great. Those oyster sandwiches. Wolf Bay Lodge is great. Voyagers is probably the dress up place.
Oh,
you know?
yeah. I've been to
Mhm.
Voyagers.
We never dress up much.
No.
but-
I know it. Me either.
promise.
Yeah.
We were talking about the 5 or 6 things that you were doing and you don't know, like,
What you're
Yeah.
gonna finish first?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm always kind of digging around with a Jones thing and remembering stuff that he said and just putting stuff together. I'm working on a kind of a teen thing. I've got several, that I've started, and I sometimes I do that just to kind of see what takes off, and
Right.
because I'm ADD as I can be, and so it's sometimes hard to I want to find something that I definitely want to pay attention to, because I
Right.
struggle with that anyway.
Right.
And, excuse me. And so been writing some songs lately and just doing crazy stuff,
Yeah.
having a good time. I wrote a short story the other day.
Very
cool.
cool.
I just wished I could be inside your head.
I know.
Well,
Same
you might, that might not be a pretty place.
I'll just keep reading your books.
the streamlined version.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, well, and we also wanted to let people know, we've talked about a few of your books, but is there a best way for people to contact you or to follow you? I know we talked about Blue Plate Special.
Yeah, and they can get the books from, you can get them anywhere, but if you get them on our website, I've signed them all. And
Very
so,
cool.
but andyandrews.com is the easiest place.
Okay.
And, but I would really urge you to put your email address in
Mhm.
on the site, because then we'll send you our podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll just come to you. It's the professional noticer,
Right.
and you just kind of keep you apprised on what's going on. And the people on the email list get the coupons for all the stuff.
Right,
You know,
right.
I mean,
Yeah.
we do a coupon code every week, and so the just people that are hanging out with us, we want to treat them great.
Yes, I can see that.
Yes, absolutely.
You're a really great person. So
Mhm. Yeah.
Well, I'm a husband, and I'm a dad, and I'm a friend, and I have a good time. And
Yeah.
so, but those are the most important things. I was really very interested that the mother-daughter team is going. I think that's awesome.
Thank
Yep.
you.
She's my best friend.
Yes.
That's just great. That's so great.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. So we will see you soon.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, you guys let us know when you're coming down.
All right. We will.
will.
Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you, guys. I'm honored to be asked. I appreciate you guys using the book, and keep in touch. If I can ever help you, let me know.